For this project, I wanted to see how I could cut back on the plastic waste I produce each day. To go about this, I decided to stop using the disposable plastic water bottles that I've been using my whole life. Instead, I will start using a reusable Nalgene bottle. For the first 2 weeks of the project, I established baseline data by continuing to use the disposable bottles and counting how many of them I drank each day. At the end of the 2 weeks, I switched over to the Nalgene bottle and then recorded how many ounces I drank each day. And so then at the end of those 4 weeks, I was able to convert the ounces into the number of disposable bottles, and I could see how many I had saved. The society we live in today has allowed consumption to become a powerful driving force. With respect to the environment, this consumption has turned sharply towards the side of permanent damage and destruction. The drive to make products quicker and cheaper, combined with a relative indifference about longevity, has created a culture of disposability. A key part of this culture is the use of plastics. The problem with this is that plastic waste is a leading contributor to the destruction of the environment. Although recycling is an important step to reducing plastic waste, there's an even better solution. We can simply reduce the amount of disposable plastics that we consume. I recorded my baseline data from January 18th to February 1st. I recorded how many bottles of water I drank each day, then also recorded any unusual circumstances that occurred. For example, I went hiking twice and ran out of bottles once. This did affect my data, since I drank a lot more water when I went hiking and drank none when I ran out of bottles, but I think it still shows a realistic representation of the average person. On February 2nd, I switched over to my Nalgene bottle and changed how I recorded my data. Since the reusable bottle was larger, I couldn't always finish the whole thing each night. Because of that, it was easier to record how many ounces I drank each day. For the sake of simplicity, I assumed that a disposable water bottle was 17 ounces. This let me convert the ounces I drank each day into bottles. Again, I had some outliers, but it still provides a reasonable snapshot of the average person. This graph represents the volume of water I drank each day while using disposable bottles. It is important because it shows the outliers and the average. For this 2-week period, I drank an average of 41.9 fluid ounces each day. This graph represents the number of disposable bottles I consumed each day. It is particularly interesting to me because of the trend it has. It shows that I drank more water at the beginning of the project than at the end of it, with a fairly reliable slope down between the two. I think I might have been a little overzealous at the start of the project, and thus drank a lot more water than I normally would have, so I think the second week is probably a better description of my habits. The trend line shows that I drank an average of 2.46 bottles a day. Here we see the graph depicting the volumes of water that I drank for the last 4 weeks. It shows that I drank an average of 32.8 fluid ounces each day. So I did end up drinking less when I used the refillable bottle than the disposable bottle. I think there's a couple reasons for that. The disposable bottles were nice and cold from being in the fridge, and they tasted normal since they had been purified. The water from the water fountain, on the other hand, tasted awful, and it wasn't cold because my Nalgene bottles wouldn't fit in the fridge. Finally, we have the graph that shows how many bottles I saved in the last 4 weeks. The trend line is much flatter, so I think that the data would be more reliable. It shows that I drank the equivalent of 2.4 bottles per day. I found that making the switch was relatively easy once I had established a new habit. It took some work to form that habit, but I think it was well worth it. In the last 4 weeks of the project, I saved about 70 water bottles. A disposable plastic water bottle weighs right around 1.2 ounces, so I saved 84 ounces of plastic from the trash. This doesn't sound like all that much, but if you consider that 19,453 students attended Clemson last year, that could be a huge savings. If every student made the switch for just 1 month, Clemson would save 102,128.25 pounds of plastic waste. Just imagine if every person in America made the switch, and not just for a month, but forever. The savings would be immense. There isn't a huge economic case for making the switch, because water is really inexpensive, but you have to look beyond that initial purchase. This would reduce the need for plastic recycling, and it could stop a lot of the damage we have caused to our environment. I believe it is in humanity's best interest to switch from using disposable plastic water bottles to reusable bottles. Being environmentally friendly has started to become a cool thing. Because of that, many of us already have reusable bottles, we just don't use them all the time. I think that more people would stop using disposable bottles if they gained a bad image. Using a refillable bottle shows that you're willing to put out a little more effort in your daily life to help the environment a lot. Once you get in the habit of filling up a bottle before you go out, this practice really doesn't require all that much effort. In fact, it can even make your life easier. When you're out and about and run out of water, all you have to do is go fill up at a water fountain again, instead of running to the store to stand in a checkout line to buy an overpriced bottle from that little refrigerator they've got. A 32-ounce Nalgene bottle sells for about $10, so it really isn't that big of an investment, and they last forever. So that means you don't have to keep going to the store to buy more and more disposable bottles. In the long run, this practice will save you money. But more importantly, it provides an easy way to feel good about helping save the environment. I think that Rolston's ecocentrism and Bookchin and Berry's social ecology work best with my practice. Rolston says that value is found. With that thinking, Earth and nature itself are valuable. Because of this value, it is our responsibility to take care of nature. Most of the plastic bottles we use end up in landfills or out in nature. When discarded in nature, they can physically harm valuable things like fish and animals. Social ecology also supports my practice. Berry talks about the exploiter and the nurturer. With respect to this project, the exploiter uses disposable plastic bottles, and the nurturer uses refillable bottles. The exploiter views land as a resource, so they think that it's okay to drill for the petroleum used to make and transport the bottles. Their selfishness and time is money attitude work well with disposable bottles. After all, it is easier to just grab a new bottle when you're thirsty, and who has the time to take the empty bottles to the recycling center when the garbage truck could just come and pick it up for you? The nurturer, on the other hand, does care about the health of the environment. They would rather put in a little more work to use the refillable bottle. After all, the land is part of the community, so exploiting it for their own use just hurts themselves. They prefer the quality bottle that can be used over and over again to the vast quantity of single-use bottles that are required to keep up with it. A lot of the destruction and abuse of nature can be traced back to society acting more as an exploiter than a nurturer.